All right. Good morning, everybody. This is John Baptiste of Red Pill Religion, and I am here with this dude,
Blind
blind,
Shepherd.
yeah, blind shepherd. Um, I can't say you're at Twitter. Um, if you want,
Oh, Elastian, Blind
Elastin.
Elastian.
Yes, yes, yes.
Yeah, it's a different word for German shepherd. Well, shepherd in general.
Oh,
Since when
that's
I typed in blind shepherd, it was already taken by an organization that was dedicated to blind shepherds.
oh,
Yeah, it's kind of interesting. I didn't realize such a thing existed, but that's kind of nice. So
that
then when
is.
I so when I went looking for another alternate word name for shepherd, I found Elastian.
I got you.
Yeah, I don't remember what it was exactly, if it was a Latin thing or if it was something else.
Oh, excuse me. So today we're going to be talking about collective rights versus individual rights. Um, my take on the whole on that is why not both? um, because it seems like we need to be part of a collective, or I don't like the word collective because people think of everybody thinking the same way type of thing, but we need to be part of a society, part of a community, whereas it's a group of people that you know
Yeah, I mean, you could call
all
it group rights or
yeah.
I don't know what you want to call it. Genre rights? I don't know.
And then
It's
you
just the
have
idea when I was listening to one of Sargon's thing and they're talking about communism and rights and all that, and I thought to myself that there is an interesting take on that where the right to, for example, religious freedoms, should that supersede, because that would be group right, should that supersede the right to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, which would be an individual right?
well, my take on that would be you that could be part of your pursuit of happiness, your pursuit of liberty, being able to go to synagogue, or being able to go to church, or not going to church at all. The basic foundation of you know my country, at least from you know school teaching. We'll go with that. The school teaching on the pilgrims and the I forgot the other group. The Pilgrims and the Saints was what they were called. The original people that came over on the Mayflower and stuff like that. They were half of them were coming from. You had the Dutch, which were, I think, the Pilgrims, and then you had the Saints, which were like the Puritans, and they came over, and the Puritans came over because in Britain the king's religion was your religion. It was always some form of Protestant Christianity usually. So it people would change based on that, and then a group of people said no, no, I like George's religion. I don't like your religion, and then they were basically exiled, sent over here. That was that's the story of why we were so big on religious rights anyway. Yeah.
It's also the same reason why there's a North and South Ireland, Protestant
Yes.
versus Catholic.
Yes. That's a weird thing too, because it's now gotten to the point to where neither of them are fighting for the original goal. Now the IRA is essentially just a criminal organization. They've
I'm pretty
bought.
sure the IRA is actually gone now at this point. I think they're actually like gone. They're no longer considered a group.
Oh yeah, but the people who claim to be IRA are not really doing what the terrorist activities that the IRA used to do, as far
Bombings
as
and such. Yeah.
yeah. Now it just seems to be more gun running and stuff like that.
Yeah, I heard at one point the conflict between the IRA and the government was so bad, or like that border area was so bad that it was actually as bad as the Middle East in terms of like death count.
Yeah, that was something that was weird to me in the early 2000s because all the way up to the 90s, and then in the late 90s they started fracturing the IRA. From
Well,
my understanding of how that happened, I'm not sure. I'm not a I not really invested in the narratives of the IRA or the state of Ireland. I'm not really that well versed in it, but it's a good example.
state of Ireland. Yeah, it was actually, if I remember correctly, had something to do with I think it was called like the Good Easter or Good Monday or something. It was an event where they basically hammered out kind of some sort of like I wouldn't call it an agreement, but almost like a treaty kind of thing, where it was like, yeah, we'll stop basically pestering you. You just don't go after us anymore, sort of thing. It was like an armistice or something like that. But anyways,
Yeah,
sorry, we're getting way off track. I guess that's kind of my fault. But the idea I was trying to think of is, can you take a bunch of rights and section them off into individual versus group? And because my thought behind that was that the individual should always come before the group. Do you agree?
in certain cases, yes. There's also instances where the group should supersede the individual on the basis of we don't want to get we don't want the power balance to be solely favoring the individual, because then that gives a way for activist organizations and other organizations that do you know that do lobbying, that's not technically supposed to be doing political activities, but that has been in the United States, at least. Political activities means solely um, siding with a particular party or candidate. You can as a nonprofit organization, you can talk about you know political issues, but you can't really be part of the politics, if if that makes sense.
Well, yeah, I kind of get that, but that's the thing, because an individual can't campaign for their um, values. Basically, that would be a collective thing. That's kind of the whole thing about it being an individual, is that you can't kind of push, you can't lobby, basically.
Yeah, and there's like I'm there's parts of the individual parts that I really agree with. Like, the right to privacy is absolutely an individual right, and that is right in the Constitution of the United States. I don't know about Canada, but at least in the Constitution of the United States, we have the right to privacy. We have the right to not, to say no to the military if they want to stay in our house, for example. You know,
We have something kind of like that. It's not actually straight up privacy, because we don't actually have a right to privacy. It's more like we have a right not to be arbitrarily detained, harassed, stuff like that from the police without just reason, basically. Like, for example, I can walk down the street and a police officer cannot come up and just arbitrarily start talking to me unless he has a reason or I volunteer.
yeah, it's not in all. That's not the case in all states here. It's weird. In the state that I'm living in currently, that it's like that, but in the state that I'm from, Florida, um, the cops have a right to stop you and search you, um, stop and ask you for your ID, and if you don't have your ID, they can search you. If you don't have an ID on you, they can search you.
Huh,
And
interesting.
there's the rationale behind that is Florida is a huge has a huge drug problem. Like, the opioid epidemic that you hear about, a lot of the pill mills um, in Florida, at least, because it's a weird thing with the pharmaceutical industry, and this seems like it's going off, but I'm going to get to a point of collective rights here. With individual can go and get in a car accident, right? And it's not a pleasant thing. They get it on different type of Percocets, Oxycontin, the opioid type drugs, and then you have these companies coming in and basically giving doctors incentive to push a certain type of drug on a certain type of ailment, which leads to addiction and problems like that. And the one of the problems with Florida is, does the corporations have a right to operate business in this fashion? Do they have a right to send their salespeople to a doctor's office and use what seems to be high pressure tactics to sell medication to help people? I mean, do they have that right? That's a question that that should be asked, in my opinion, as far as the our opioid problems in this country. But what are your thoughts?
Well, actually, this is something I found kind of fascinating about the drugs, about the way drugs are treated in America versus Canada. For example, if I'm watching an American television station, God fucking damn, the amount of commercials I see advertising drugs is just ridiculous. We don't actually have that here in Canada. At least I don't see them. I think I remember hearing something a while back saying that it was illegal for drug companies to advertise their drugs here in Canada. I mean, you might get the thing like the over the counter stuff, like for example, Viagra, or I don't know, allergen type medication. But when it comes to the actual like antidepressants and stuff, you cannot advertise that stuff on Canadian television. So opioids would be right out of the question.
Yeah, I mean, they don't advertise opioids here. It's mostly mental health drugs, and it's like, why? So you're going to tell your psychiatrist, I want to try this, and you have no basic idea on pharmacology or on, well, as far as psychiatry goes, which is solely deals in how medication works and how it not messes with your brain, but how it functions with your brain, and it is a hit and miss thing. But
Yeah.
it's still,
Like for example, right now I have this thing here. It's amphetamines actually. Act amphetamine XR 20 milligrams. Don't know if that's important or not.
so you have ADD,
Yes.
essentially.
I used to be on Ritalin as a child, but my parents took me off of that because I don't remember the reason, but there was a reason.
Ritalin it supposedly has a very similar chemical structure to cocaine, as far as just looking at the molecule. Like, if you look at the molecule graph of Ritalin and look at the molecule of Ritalin and the molecule of cocaine, they look very similar. But there's I don't know if it's actually it's synthetic cocaine or not. I would say it's not, because I'm not going to say why, but I have reason to believe that that's just propaganda. But it as far as which does bring more into advertising, does corporations, which are a group, do they have a right to actually use the Edward Bernays World War I model of propaganda for advertisement? Because that's essentially what they're doing. Taking Freud's work and applying it to advertisement. The skinny bikinis and stuff like that. Bikinis, the women with the right ratios, and you would have feminists saying, well, these people do not have the right to advertise in this way because it damages women. And I'm like, well, do they have a right to advertise that way because it's straight up wartime propaganda, using sex instead of othering? It is should that be allowed, type of thing?
That is a very good question because I have heard a few things about that on the terms of marketing. Like for example, I was watching actually a Game Grumps episode. I assume you know about Game Grumps, and the guy on it, Danny, mentioned that he used to go to school for marketing, but he ended up dropping out of it because it basically made him depressed because he started realizing just how much psychology was being used to manipulate people's minds into doing things like seeing the color blue would make your mind think long term, whereas seeing the color red, like for example on a sale sign, your mind would start thinking short term. You wouldn't be able to, you'd be essentially motivated to purchase the stuff just because your brain starts thinking that way.
Yes, and there's I've been catching myself do it too. There's sometimes when an ad comes on, like for fast food, and you're suddenly hungry, type of thing. And it's not even you're supposed to be hungry for what's on TV, but you know with the power of suggestion, it's like, for me, it's like, I really want a hamburger, so I go in the kitchen and make a hamburger, and it's like, you know did I really want this type of hamburger, or did I want the hamburger that was on the TV, type of question. And it's just like, I'm very big into, you should at least learn how to cook, learn how to do grocery shopping. It is an individual's responsibility to oneself to eat healthily, and I don't think that fast food is really healthy eating, because it's usually just greasy food. You can control how much grease you have just by cooking it yourself, type of thing. But
Yeah,
that's way off topic.
yeah, yeah. I guess we should kind of return to that. So I guess in the question you're asking, getting back to the question you're asking, I would say that the company has the right to advertise their product to the point of undue hardship. And if you cannot prove that there is any undue hardship by their advertisement, then there's no reason they cannot advertise. Because at that point it becomes the responsibility of the individual to decide whether they want it to or not. And if it's over a course of, you go and get a Big Mac once, it's not that big of a deal. But of course, yes, if you were to extend that long term, but then if you're extending it long term, you should be able to say that the individual has the awareness, I guess, or they should be able to educate themselves on these tactics. Like, for example, you and I.
Yes, that's I completely agree with that. Um, what are your thoughts on separation of church and state? Like, for example, when somebody says, the church, I automatically think people, the people, not the organization, because there's not really, if you go to different churches, you don't really see an organization other than the Catholic Church, maybe some Eastern Orthodox, that have, you'll see some kind of structure, but for the most part, it just doesn't seem like there's a structured organization behind it. But when people talk about strict separation of church and state, I'm like, so at what point does your right as an individual, go to the point where you can say people that believe this thing should not and cannot actually participating in politics, such as, you know, certain groups within politics is trying to say that if you have a religious spin on things, if you're trying to push something and you're using religion, that shouldn't be allowed in politics. What are your thoughts on that?
Sorry, I had the wrong button pushed. That's a good question. Well, first off, the question about what I perceive as the church, that I could recognize as being my own experience, because the church that I attended, which I still technically am a member of, but I haven't actually been there in a couple of years. The people there weren't the same people every time. It was more like, like I was brought up to be a Protestant, and that's, in my experience, that's like Christian light or diet Christian. So you don't have the same group of people showing up there every time or every weekend. The only time you'd see the same people would be during Christmas or Easter Monday or whatever it was, or Easter Sunday, one of two. I think it was Easter Sunday. But even then, I didn't really get to know the people. So to me, the church is the organization and not the people. And that's just my own experience. If I maybe got involved a bit more, maybe my perspective on that would change. As to whether or not the church could lobby, I don't see a reason why they shouldn't be able to lobby. I mean, it's still up to the states, the Senate and the House and yada yada yada, whether or not to actually listen to them. So, lobbying. Or actually, I guess that's a better question then. Is what do you mean by lobbying then? Do we mean, like, for example, raising a shit ton of money and donating it, or are we talking about just literally like, hey, I want this?
Well, I'm talking more about the petition system. You know, hey, I want this, and here's the thousands of other people that also wants this, or the hundreds of other people, however much that threshold is. Electronic petitions, as far as I am aware, don't really do anything. You can't really enact legal change, like legally, by how everything is written. Electronic petitions are not included, um, which is why I laugh at people trying to be like change.org, tell the government. And it's like the government's not going to do anything. They only want either paper or something scanned and emailed to your representative, being like, hey, here's an issue. Here's the voice of 50,000 individuals. Let's just throw that number out there. Like you and a group of people that aren't affiliated with any actual organization, but you and a group of people, you have a lawyer in your group or whatever, but you write a petition to amend, let's say, part of the state constitution. Stay small in local government, but you do something in local government, and then you send your petition off to your representative for your district, and it's like, these are the people in your district that want this type of change. Here's the signatures that prove that, and here is the and here's a brief on a brief paragraph from a few of them on their thoughts on this one subject. I was involved in a county petition for dredging up the outway into the Gulf of Mexico, because not just pleasure boats used it, but commercial boats used it, and it needed to be dredged up, because it just you'd have boats getting stuck, both pleasure boats and commercial boats, and it would just be a mess. So, and as an example of what you can do as an individual at a very small level. At the federal level, you need like the 50,000. You'd need like a 10% of the district. So you'd have to sit out at a mall or wherever the most people are in your community to get these or within your district. You'd have to go to multiple different places in the district for your congressman or senate and get all those paperwork, get everything filled out, all the signatures that they need to say, yeah, all right, this is an issue that people actually care about, and this is how they want to vote. That's how it's supposed to work as far as lobbying goes. I'm sorry if that was too long.
No worries. Give me some time to think about that. Yeah, the idea of using, well, I mean, that's basically just the group asking for something. I mean, it seems perfectly legitimate option. If the group wants something, I say let them have it, as long as it, like, or at least let it be proposed. That way, the majority can then vote on it.
That's how citizens can get different laws proposed or different or a certain type of vote. It one of the problems we have with American politics is organizations doing that and getting signatures from out of state and telling out of state people, or out of district people, if it's federal, send a letter to this senator that does not represent you but represents other people, and tell them your thoughts. It's like, no, there's a certain person that represents you. It depends on where you live. You can find that out by looking at your voting district, and like District 12 would be X, X amount of people, and they're represented by this senator. But we have like, and it's not groups, it's groups telling individuals to, hey, go do this. And it's individuals using individual voices, but they're being kind of not coerced or led, but pushed, more towards, hey, this person is against, this person is against our group's values, or our group's, what our group wants. So convince them as individuals to do it, to do it our way, type of thing. And I think it's kind of wrong, because you're not represented by that person, you're represented by the person of where you live. You shouldn't be meddling with that, in my opinion, anyway.
Well, that would be a question of how do you prevent such behavior, which is not exactly an easy question to answer. I mean,
you really can't, not without trampling on both individual and collective rights. Like the right to free speech, that is both an individual and collective right. The right to free press, that is to an extent a collective right, but it is also an individual right, because there is nothing that stops non-corporations from creating news agencies, for example. Like if I wanted to,
alternate media.
Yeah, if I wanted to on YouTube, I could just, set up a
fake news.
Yeah, essentially set up a little news channel and just report on things, or what I did on the with my other YouTube channel is just stream Senate and Congress sessions, which I haven't done in a long time. I think I should start doing that now. Not while having the microphone muted, but there's a live stream that is connected, through a government website that anybody can see it, just by going to it. It's just people don't. So, I think they're lazy.
Yeah. Well,
For the
that's
most
my
part.
own.
But it's also boring too, because it's you get the 30 minutes to an hour of them arguing, and then you have like a couple of hours of watching them deliberate, and then you have like 30 minutes of watching people scurry to put down their votes, and then the total tally of votes. There are 10 hour every time Congress is in session. They're in session for like 10 to 12 hours. It's a lot of arguing, a lot of filibustering on both sides, and it's something that the media doesn't actually show. Like C-SPAN has their streams, but it's interrupted with ads, and then they keep on. They don't show the deliberation part and the calling for the quorum part. They just show the parts where people are talking, type of thing.
Well, a good way to solve that issue is to record the streams, like not basically record the entire event or the deliberation or whatever you want to call it. Chop out the boring parts, play it back this time with other people who are watching it with you, who could then comment on it. That way you can pause it while whatever, and you can be like, well, this blah 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 whatever. Because actually, that's a very good, interesting thing you're mentioning that, because I just started following on Twitter the Senate in Canada, the Canadian Senate, and it pops up with interesting little bills like this one here. This is Bill C-51. I saw it last week. It's an act to amend the Criminal Code and the Department of Justice Act, and to make subsequent amendments to other acts. I thought that was hilarious, because the first one is it would change or remove parts of the criminal code that have been or risk being ruled unconstitutional or that are outdated. For example, it would repeal bans on dueling, because apparently that's still illegal in Canada. I guess it won't be anymore. So yeah, pick up a sword and go at it. And fraudulent practices of witchcraft, because apparently it's illegal to pretend to be witches. Weird.
Well, that shouldn't actually be made not illegal, because I agree with if you just claiming to be a thing doesn't make you that thing, and if you're just going in and saying I'm going to cast a spell, or I'm going to cast out, you think your house is haunted, I'm just going to cast that out. That any atheist can at that point can go, yeah, I'm a witch, here's, and do all sorts of weird things that doesn't really mean anything. It isn't really ritualistically symbolic to anything, and you're just spreading around, you know, uh, falsehoods that have been spread around for thousands of years, and that, in my opinion, would hurt the people that are actually practicing witchcraft, that are actually, doing that, their thing to help people. Like even if you don't believe that there's ghosts, it is still a peace of mind to go into. Somebody still has a greater peace of mind when you go into their house, sage it, and do an actual ritual that has to do with clearing your space, type of thing. The Native Americans here, they do something similar with their smudging rituals. Like there are some Native Americans that you can pay to come in, and they have all their stuff, and their stuff isn't cheap. Like the white sage and stuff like that, you get them for like $20 a pound of just the leaves, and the abalone shells themselves range from $20 to $40. So essentially, if you wanted to do it right, buy and buy everything that person would need, you'd be spending easily $100. So it's still, supplies and stuff like that. I can see the reason for wanting to operate a business using witchcraft, and there's allowances for it within the different old religions to do that, but it's still, if you're saying that you're a witch and you go to church, or if you're saying you're a witch and you don't believe, and you know, and on social media you're an atheist, it's you know, I think it would,
impersonating another religion.
yeah, I think that would be it's like me going around and impersonating a Catholic priest saying, I'll give you absolution if you come and do a confession in this Winnebago. I'm just a traveling priest. I'm an actual priest. You can do your confession and be absolved. But me saying that does not actually make it true, and I'm not obliged under the same laws as like a priest is. Like there's, you know, confidentiality. Like a priest cannot actually say anything you say to a priest in confession is legally protected. You know, unless you actually say, I am going to go out and cause harm, you know, I'm going out to kill somebody, or I have killed, or, you know, I just killed somebody, you know, those are the only instances where a priest has to, you know, report you. But if a police officer was to come up to a priest and be like, and ask him questions about you, they're like, I can't say anything about, you know, just like with the lawyer client privilege and, you know, doctor patient confidentiality, same thing applies to a priest. So I me personally, there's some outdated rules, quote unquote, that regard religion that I think shouldn't be seen as outdated. You know.
Yeah, it's interesting because you're right. That would, like, I could tie that into, say, for example, mediums, or at least those who claim to be mediums, like those ones who that my aunt watches and loves to watch. You know, those stupid cold reading kind of guys. You know, the ones who would in an audience go up to them and like, oh, yeah, I'm getting Billy. Is Billy in the audience here? You know, stupid shit like that. You
Yeah,
know,
like
people
what
are
John Edwards
charlatans.
used to do.
Yeah, they basically would be so basically they're repealing something that's meant to protect people from being bamboozled, basically.
Yes, and
Interesting.
I don't think that that's outdated at all. I mean,
No, I don't. I agree with you. That is actually very valid in today's, especially in today's world. Except maybe it should be changed from witchcraft to other things. Like, for example, I can imagine it being applied to feminism, for example. You know, the male feminists who act like they're allies, but really they're, yeah, they're not.
and I'm going to use the word slippery slope.
Yep,
That
that would work.
that is a very slippery slope as well, because then you have, you know, the idea of the litmus test, the purity tests, and I'm not 100%, you know, against purity tests when it comes to, you know, trying to see if somebody is actually the thing that they are, like somebody who claims to be Christian but yet does not try to live like, you know, by the virtues and teachings of Jesus, for example. I don't think you can be you should be able to call yourself Christian if you cannot live by those things. It's the same thing with being a Jew. If you cannot live by the Torah, you shouldn't call yourself a Jew.
Isn't that also one of the reasons why we've been having so many terrorist attacks lately? Because apparently in Islam you can essentially get that sort of, like, you can basically your entire life be a piece of shit. But so long as you kill people in the name of God, oh, don't worry, you're good.
That's a specific kind of um that's more an ideological thinking type of thing. It's weird when it was explained to me. it was explained to me weirdly, but I never actually understood Islam enough to actually be able to answer that kind of question accurately. I mean, I can tell you my thoughts on that, and it seems to be more you have the more extremist authoritarian types is the ones usually doing that, and I would just use the same thing for that I use for Judaism and Christianity. As far as that, it's like it could be that those people are are following some, they are being bamboozled by somebody who's saying that this is what it means, but the rest of Islam disagrees. I'm not really sure. I'm sorry.
No worries. Yeah, I don't know about you, but I'm not exactly an expert on Islam either. I've only asked a few Muslims themselves, and I've tried to read the Quran. I got to a part where I was reading it, and it said that the uncle of Muhammad is the one writing about 30 years after Muhammad died. I'm like, wait, what? And I was like, the ages here aren't matching it. What the fuck am I reading? And I was like, yeah, never mind. I'm not gonna bother with this shit.
Yeah, it's also weird too because it wasn't until like the 1400s until Arabic could actually be written down. It wasn't until the 1600s that Arabic could actually be printed. So there was this huge. A lot of the Quran was orally, it was or part of oral tradition. A lot of the Jewish Torah, for example,
Makes sense.
comes from an oral tradition. It wasn't originally written down, and it was written down much later than when it was created. There's a huge oral tradition in every religion because that's just how humans have been. We most of our species history was oral history, up until like 6,000 years ago. And before that, I'm almost certain that religion and not just religion but society, entertainment, everything was done by story, through stories. Like mythologies were stories told over the campfire to tell a lesson, to be informative and educational at the same time, to be able to pass off really complex ideas while keeping people's attention. I think is the whole purpose of the oral traditions throughout human history, in my opinion. But
yeah, sorry, we kind of veered off, but that was because I kind of realized partway through that that bill we were talking about, that is literally an argument for collective rights over individual rights, and I completely, it just, I didn't even notice it until you started talking about why the fraudulent witchcraft should stay illegal. I was like, crap, that is actually a good argument for when a collective right, which would be the right of the actual Wiccans, supersedes the right of the individual, which would be the person fraudulently pretending to be a witch.
yes. There's like anything. Well, we have individual. It's not. They're not rights. There's laws that govern the individual, and I'm not sure about Canada, but in America, certain ways of defrauding individuals is illegal. Like Ponzi schemes are completely illegal, 100% illegal, and there's good reasons to why they're illegal. But it's there's like an individual does not have the right to con people. Maybe in a video game, that's about the only place where you have the right to con somebody, but because it doesn't matter at that point, and unless that video game has real world currency transitions, but most video games don't. But when you're talking about in real life, outside of that, most fraudulent things are illegal. Like there's this guy who was selling Chuck E. Cheese tokens as bitcoins. He was arrested because he fraudulently sold, Chuck E. Cheese coins as bitcoins. you know, he
You could call that an entrepreneur, though.
you could you could, but it was, since it was fraudulent and he took people's money, that it's illegal because of what has happened in the past. There's like that law, not being allowed to fraudulently say that you practice witchcraft to make money. That probably came from someone actually doing it and ripping a lot of people off for a lot of money. And you can also argue on, just staying on topic, you could also argue for that, all everybody who says they practice witchcraft is doing it fraudulently, because we all know it doesn't work, type of thing. That would be more of the atheist anti witchcraft type of people, which isn't just atheists. You'd have some Christians saying witchcraft isn't real, so there's no point of having that law, because they would all be breaking law, type of mentality. And yeah, you do understand what I'm saying, though, right?
Yeah, I get it. I was just trying to see if there was actually any other laws in the Canadian Criminal Code about witches. Apparently not. I was honestly expecting to find a law against witchcraft, like a heresy law sort of thing. No, apparently not. Interesting. But then again, the criminal code has been redone a few times since,
yeah,
Salem.
And it probably for good reason. Probably for the actions that happened in Salem. A lot of the anti-witch and anti-paganism laws in America were repealed between Salem witch trials and the 1970s. Up until now, there's still some laws in some places that I have to go for 1 second, but um 1 second. But continue. What's another question that we have?
Another question to come up with. That's very good. Because, I mean, the whole point of this was actually to figure out whether or not we could list down a bunch of rights, be them collective or individual rights. And we've kind of destroyed that entire point by me finding that damn bill. Well, that sucks. Although I do like the idea of crafting a bill of rights, I guess you say, for individuals and corporations. Because the idea of having, because right now, the way the laws are set up, it's kind of unfair to the individual. I mean, a company can beat out anyone in court well, not anyone, but it's easier for a company to take an individual to the courts, just financially at least. And back.
Oh, sorry. Yeah, I didn't really go to another room. I just had to use the bathroom. But
yeah, I was just thinking about the well, because my whole initial purpose of this was kind of to come up with a list of individual or rights that you can separate into individual and collective, but with the idea that the individual rights must always supersede the individual or the collective. But now that we've kind of found at least one example where the collective right should and must supersede the individual, that kind of defeats the purpose of what I was looking for.
well, I mean, there's also rights where the individual supersedes the collective, like I was talking about privacy rights before. What you post on Facebook or Twitter, for example, is you post it publicly. You're using a public company. Everybody can see it, so whether or not the government could use that to not invade your privacy, because you're just letting the whole world know, your thoughts on a subject. But you go into your email, for example. An individual's email is not protected the same as, you know as snail mail is, and I think it should be. I think that, to open somebody's email, you should get the same penalties as opening up somebody else's mail, and that would seem hypocritical for me, because I posted on Twitter the WikiLeaks of John Podesta's emails and the DNC emails, but you know you but it was showing that there is something wrong with both of those issues. For example, the DNC is a collective organization that is supposed to be that is actually controlling um, the Democratic Party. It's controlling who gets elected and who doesn't in the Democratic Party, essentially. So those shouldn't be protected under those same laws, because it's but the more personal things, like going to get talking about getting pizza and stuff like that, it's like you have the more I think Pizzagate was completely crazy, but I mean, it's stuff that does happen, but it's more that those were private communications. Those never should have been included, because they weren't, official things. But then again, none of those emails should have been should have contained the professional stuff that they did, in my opinion. What are your opinions on that?
Well, I think that was a unique case due to the fact that there was a lot of corruption and scumbaggery going on. Should all of it? I think that is something that if we could trust our court systems and judges and everything like that, if they were truly unbiased, which is something they should be aiming for, but clearly in some cases they are not, as I found with the what was it called, the Trump ban thing. Because according to from what I've read on the Trump ban, because I actually did read the full order, the executive order, and I checked the laws in which he refers to, and in accordance with the laws he's referring to, the second travel ban was 100% legal. So for a judge for the California court, whichever one that was, to call it unconstitutional, I was like, this is bullshit. You're clearly showing a bias here. And
well, yeah, I mean, plus they weren't really in that executive order. He wasn't saying Muslims specifically. He was talking about people that are from those areas, because partially of how our immigration system works, the other government has to actually exist to be, for us to do the background check that is needed. Like, Yemen was bombed for the past like 4 years, 3 years, or something like that during Obama's administration by Saudi Arabia. By the time he did that executive order, Somalia hasn't actually had a stable government since the 90s. You have Syria is currently under civil war, civil and regular war, because if you want to be technical, the Kurds who are helping with take out ISIS in Syria mainly because they just want part of northern Iraq, the part that Saddam took from them. Um, they're the main ones fighting against ISIS, and then you have the several splinter cells within Syria that are also fighting against ISIS. So there's like this kind of civil war going on there. And with what happened in Aleppo and stuff like that, you don't have a very stable government there. It's clear. Iraq, obviously, there's still suicide bombings, even without troops on the ground, because we were told that the suicide bombings would stop when we were gone. They didn't stop. They haven't stopped since Obama took us over. One of the biggest countries in the middle in the world right now that receives daily terrorist attacks is Iraq. I don't know. I don't know if that's the case for 2018, but it was the case for 2007, in 2017, 2016, and so forth and so on. And I forgot why I started ranting about.
Well, thing is, when I read that executive order, I noticed something rather interesting about it. It is not referring to the regular normal immigration. It is referring to a special category that's like basically it's if I can try and remember. There was a group under this law that basically said no one in this area can get into the United States unless it fulfilled some of these special requirements. The executive bill was basically removing those special exemptions. So the law saying you can't come into this country if this, he was basically just going back and making that law actually effective. Whereas before, it was pretty much, well, I can't make assumptions, but looking at what I can see there's a lot of loopholes. He was basically closing the loopholes. So for people to get, oh, this is blah, 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 it's like, this law already exists. He's just making it actually work.
Yeah, he was just making it work and making it actually useful.
Yeah, I mean, even if you make the argument that, oh, he said during his campaign trail that he wants to abolish or he wants to ban Muslims, okay, I don't care what he wants. What I care is what he's actually doing. Because even if the intention is unconstitutional, I don't give a fuck because he's still working within the law. Like, say, for example, a guy wants to, now let's say someone wants to screw over someone. Like he's upset at his neighbor because his neighbor decided to piss on his lawn or something like that. So he goes to the I don't know what you call it, local authority. I don't know. He goes to someone basically, the government basically, and somehow manages to get his lawn extended to somehow basically take over some of his neighbor's lawn just to screw him over. Has he done so illegally? No. If he hasn't, what the fuck's your problem? If you don't like it, change the fucking law.
Yeah, exactly.
That was
That
a
is
bad
exactly
example,
right. But yeah,
yeah, like that's another good way of saying it. A neighbor has pissed us off by putting a wooden atrocity behind us. It is in their backyard. It is not above the height requirement, so legally it is fine. However, there is a window in it peeking out over into our backyard where there is a pool, and it's creepy because it looks like they're watching us from their backyard. How do you solve this? Well, you can get a tree, you could plant a tree in their backyard as long as it doesn't extend beyond a certain point. It now obstructs the view from that window. Am I violating the law by doing so? No. So, neither of us have violated the laws. We're just trying to screw each other over. None of us have done anything legally wrong, and I don't think any of us should be punished for basically pissing each other off.
yeah. I mean, nobody has the right to not be offended. Nobody has the right to, not have these little. I mean, nobody has the right to tell you what you can and cannot do on the property you are leasing from the government. You technically own that property, but if you don't pay taxes, it's gone. So
Yeah.
you're leasing it from the government at that point.
Yeah, and when it comes to this travel ban thing, that was the same sort of idea. It's like these people don't have a legal right to enter your country. That is entirely a privilege. You know, kind of like spandex. Is it spandex? I think it's spandex. That old saying where it's a privilege, not a right, for fat people.
Yeah.
And I can say that because I am overweight. But yeah, so when it comes to the travel ban thing, it's like these people don't have a right into your country, and even the refugee argument is stupid because if I remember correctly, according to the United Nations, they are only refugees if they enter the nearest safe port of harbor. Canada and the United States are nowhere near the nearest safe port of harbor. There is no way we could ever be considered. No one coming to the no one could come to Canada and the United States as a refugee, except for Mexico. Now that's possible, and maybe Russia. And apparently in Canada, they can come from the United States for some stupid reason. We are literally having refugees coming across the border from the United States. And I don't mean illegals. Yeah, we do have illegals from the United States coming into the United States. But I mean, we've actually had legit, like, Americans, born, bred, purebred, purely American, coming into Canada claiming refugees. It's fucking weird.
Wait, what?
We've had American citizens who were born in America, not children of immigrants. They are actually American. We've had them come to Canada claiming refugee status, fleeing Donald Trump.
Oh,
I think there was 3 of them.
Oh.
It's not many. It's a very weird scenario, and I think it was in Quebec they came across.
Well, I mean, as far as the refugee thing, there are instances where we should take refugees if they were beneficial to us. Like a lot of the refugees we took from Iraq were our informants. Like a lot of the people who informed to military intelligence and had really good information were given the refugee pass over here. So we reward people who the refugees that help us essentially, but we reward them by sending them through the refugee cycle and then letting them be placed and housed and watched by the Catholic Church essentially, which I don't think is a bad thing, but the people who actually handles our refugee systems, like actually housing the refugees where they are, all that isn't the government, but the American Diocese of Dionysus or whatever you pronounce it, of
Sounds Greek.
The Catholic Church. Yeah, it is. It is Greek, but it's a weird word that means the organizational thing. Like, the Catholic Church would be the only organization. Hello?
I don't hear you anymore. Testing 1, 2, 3.
Oh crap! I was talking, and
Yeah.
and
Did you mute yourself?
I was muted. Whoops.
I was gonna say, did you want to?
What did you say? Before?
I don't know. I got sidetracked too. I was kind of
Are we
fiddling around with my computer here. Um, by the way,
good?
did you want to show your viewers what I was working on?
Okay, so uh um yeah, Dionysus is a weird Greek word. But the really the only organization, really big organization as far as a church would be the Catholic Church. Um, but that's not really the topic there. But our refugee system is controlled by the government, and the government gives our refugees to the Catholic Church essentially.
I did not know that. I was yeah, because here in Canada, for example, the government basically just handles all the refugee stuff, and apparently likes to set them up in Scarborough for some weird reason. I don't know why they would send them there. I mean, there's plenty of other places in Ontario where they can easily set up shop and probably need them. Scarborough's kind of packed right now, and so is Toronto. Hell, even Mississauga and Brampton. Brampton, God, why would you send them to Brampton? Other than familiarity.
I'm sorry about that before. My sound was muted and I was confused.
That's all right. By the way, how do you do screen share with this thing?
Um, I'm not really that sure. I was trying to do it earlier, with because I want, and instead of this format, I wanted to have everybody going through space, but no.
So I wanted to actually show the blunt that I drew. I actually literally titled the layer blunt.
You did?
Yeah, your little
Let's see here.
avatar or whatever it's called.
Yeah, thank you very much for that, by the way.
Yeah, it's a fun little experiment.
Yeah, maybe if other people like it, I can get other people to.
Oh, I don't mind doing it. It's kind of fun idea to try out. It's certainly the first otter I've ever drawn.
Oh, okay. On the left hand side,
Mm-hmm.
you have the
Oh,
chat
screen share.
screen share. Yeah.
Is now supported in audio. Oh, okay. I have to turn up the bandwidth, I guess. Da-da-da.
Oh, okay.
Cool.
Yeah.
Huh.
Now for the
Um, this is interesting. Oh, I can actually. Can I just show this? Can you see this?
I can see it. Yes. That's
Cool.
awesome. Yeah.
Smoke weed every day.
Well, it is a seed bearing herb, and
Yeah, do
it,
you like the
it
hat?
I do. I do. It
What
is
did I call it here?
a bowler, I think.
Yeah, I went looking up bowler, so here we go. What color is best for that?
Um, Black for the hat itself and that band. You could make it any color, green or blue. I'd go with blue.
Let's go with a nice deep. Oops. Yeah, now I'm just kind of having fun because I got sidetracked and now I'm like, I kind of feel like drawing again. Because drawing like this is really nice. It's
Yeah,
gotten, I could do it at work, kind of nice and easy.
yeah.
It's, it's certainly a weird kind of lot, like, drawing that other thing, I kind of decided to experiment with this, and I've noticed that when I break these up into different groups, ink, color, stuff like that, it actually makes it a lot easier to draw.
Oh, okay.
And yeah, I'm just What is this fucking thing? Nope.
So what program are you using?
Open Canvas.
Oh, okay.
I've found it kind of. It's the one I'm the most used to, so I actually went and purchased a copy. Believe it or not, purchased it a while back, but it was only recently that I was actually able to use it because before this I had a different program or different. The fuck? I had a different laptop. There. So I wasn't able to use this because right now I have the Surface with a Microsoft Pen, and I like the pen, although apparently I pushed a little too hard because I've already damaged the nub by the looks
Oh
of it.
wow.
Yeah,
Well,
I pushed really hard.
they're kind of easy to damage. Like the I usually have a Microsoft, not a Microsoft, but a Samsung Note.
Hmm.
I've had that for as my phone for the past like 2 or 3 phones I've had. Um, Yay for that free every 2 years phone that they had before they got to the hey, you got to pay us
Hmm.
extra every month for a phone. But the but I would do that too. I tried drawing on it for a little bit, but it just didn't work. So I just wrote
Hmm.
because instead of having a notepad and a pen, I would just have
Yeah,
that and just use that as my notepad and pen. It was a lot more streamlined, I think.
yeah, it's definitely a fun thing to do. It's definitely not a good thing to be doing while I'm trying to talk. It's definitely takes up a lot of my focus.
Yeah.
But it's definitely something that I wouldn't mind doing. Like, say for example, if you're on a bigger podcast or something like that, just having like this in the background with me working on it, or drawing something else, maybe some
Yeah.
other thing.
I mean, yeah. I mean, that would be something I'd actually be interested in doing.
Hmm.
Um, I don't know if you're available at night around
Uh,
8.
right now it's kind of iffy. Actually, I
Oh,
like that looking nice.
yeah.
In the future, once I move, get that new job, hopefully. Yeah, I wouldn't mind.
I mean, you could always just um, if you're bored, just have OBS open and just record what you're doing,
Hmm.
or how, and then I'll just have that and just screen share it, and it'd just be there. And every time I talk, you'd just be you drawing while I'm talking,
Just me doing the random drawing.
and just makes it look like I'm drawing. It's like no.
Claim other people's work as your own.
Well, no, I'd just be like, no, this is friend on Twitter, Blind Shepherd. He does drawings, and we shit post on the internet together.
Yeah, that's definitely something I do. Although recently I have deleted a lot of people. Like I stopped following a lot of people
Yeah,
because I was just getting kind of down about all the not what the fuck.
all the
Oh,
nonsense and everything
yeah.
that's going on.
So I instead just limited myself to news media stuff. So like for example, the Toronto Sun, CBC, basically all the Canadian networks.
I'm sorry.
Well, I wanted to be fair, so I down I what I got here? I got like the Toronto Sun, which is a more of a right wing. I believe it's a right wing tabloid. There's also the National. Let me see here. Following. Senate of Canada, Supreme Court of Canada, Toronto Star, CBC News, Toronto Sun, National Post, The National, the Globe and Mail, Got Sad, a couple of MPs, because I'm kind of curious to see what they do. Jordan B. Peterson, of course. There's your name on here. Canley, because I like laws. Canley again. And Notch, because Notch is the most epic troll I've fucking ever seen. Have you seen what he posted today? Or yesterday, last night, I guess?
No, I did not.
This guy's a fucking beast of a man. He literally put, okay, this is what he tweeted. Desperately shouting, Trump colluded will not make it so. Wake up or get woken up. Oh, if only I had that much money.
Yeah, but I see it. I see the things with money like this. The more money you have, the more problems you have. It's just better to get what you need out of life, and
Get the fuck out.
well, not get the fuck out, but just get what you need out of life, and then your life will be good. Uh, that's one of the things I like about Jordan Peterson, as far as Canadian speakers within the public sphere. I've stopped really following certain Canadian MRAs because I think that Canada and America is or Canada and the United States are we have our legal system is too separate, and we do have an active men's rights people. You actually doing, we have groups, men's rights groups, actually impacting the law here. It's they can't publicly go, say some of this stuff. You don't have the people that are actually working, in that field, reforming the laws, actually having time to go on YouTube and explaining what's going on and stuff like that.
Yeah.
So some of the I don't know. There's just I've stopped following a lot of Canadian people.
Yeah, fair enough.
I mean,
Yeah.
it's not anything against Canada or anything. It's just Jordan Peterson. There's quite a few I still follow. It's just as far as men's rights and in Canada, I don't really follow them anymore. Just because I think that how do it's not my right as an individual to try to make what a someone who belongs to another group, which nations are their own groups, right? So Canada is a different nation than America, and if you have a program talking mostly about Canadian law and not really that much about American law, and you want to try to impact American law a little bit, you wouldn't want to. It's just like going to an American personality for thoughts on how Canada should work as a society or a government, how Canada should work as a group. It just doesn't work. I don't think it's within my nation's rights or my individual rights to actually try to impact Canada or the United Kingdom or Germany, specifically to impact the politics. Like, yeah, talking is fine, but it's when it gets to Canadian politics and stuff. It's good to know what's going on, but at the end of the day, I'm still trying to talk
Gotta
to.
worry about your own backyard.
Yeah. I'm trying to talk to people, I'm not trying to talk to a global audience. I'm just trying to talk to, people within North America, because that's what impacts me on the short term, the most.
Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, what are your thoughts on what um on what do you we should have done this earlier, but as far as collective and individual, how would you, what are the different levels of collective and individual
Well,
that you would, what when does it a group of individuals become a collective, essentially?
when there's more than one.
Well, okay, but I mean, I would say when there's more, when there's more than five, because
Well, I mean, if you can attribute some, like for example, a group right would be, well, that would be representation. A group right would be assembly, because an individual cannot assemble. That's kind of impossible. They're a single creature. They can't exactly assemble into something else. Whereas a group can. Two people can assemble. Three people can assemble. 1,000 can assemble. Um, you can have individual values, but you cannot, as an individual, campaign. I mean, you probably could, but no one's going to give a shit about you. Whereas a group can, have their will basically. Like that's the thing. Actually, that's a very good way of putting it. An individual cannot have their. Oh, let me think about this for a second. An individual cannot have their will imposed on others. A group can impose their will on others.
but how effective that group can impose their will on others is dependent on whether or not the individuals will allow it to happen. That's one of the things we've seen with like hashtag movements, especially because we were talking about war of words, and that's how a collective, a group would would impose its will on an individual, is through ideas, allowing their ideas to actually have enough weight to be like, yeah, okay, I will do that. Other than, no, no, no. It's just like with feminism. Um, one of the things that I do not like about, the anti-feminist movement is they're saying, well, we're not a community, we're not a collective. It's like you just lost. You
With the
just
word
lost.
we.
Well, no, not just that, but they don't use we, but I'm just doing that for shorthand. But it's like, you you they lost because they allowed the other side to actually define something that is doesn't have just one definition, that doesn't have just one usage. They're trying to make, like the feminists are trying to make, community and collective kind of seem the same, when it's really not at all. A community is loose grouping. A collective is a tight knit grouping. It's a different type of, grouping. There's I mean, you could split it up like you would the lowest common denominator in math. In that tree format, you have group, and then, or we'll say the group that supersedes all groups within an area would be the nation. That is the borders of your nation, and you know what that government, as far as that government is, the government would be a grouping of people, because a grouping of people and a grouping of different groups within the government, and then we could just break that down forever. And then you have that part of it, and then everything underneath that government is the nation, and that would be the nation's society, which is the group, the individuals, the huge amounts of individuals who you can't really make any meaningful decision. If we base it off of social media, and every single individual has their own individual opinion, and because even within Christianity, within Judaism, within religions, within ideologies, you're still going to get individuals saying, seeing the same. You put a sentence down, every single individual is going to have different what that means to them type of thing. Some of them will sound similar, and quite a few people will just say the same thing. But then you get the different groupings within the nation, like, as far as government representation, every single individual within a district, within a city, every single person within a portion of this city is represented by this person. It's a weird thing how groups how groups of individuals become collectives, because when somebody says collective, I'm thinking of something bigger than just like a town size. I'm thinking, nation, species, because we're all a collective based on the fact that we're all Homo sapiens. We're all Americans. Because even though you're Canadian, you're still American. Not as in, you're an American citizen, but you're a citizen of government within North America, within the
Yeah,
continent of
there
North
are a
America.
lot of Canadians that aren't too fond of that classification.
All right, I'm sorry, but you
Oh, don't worry. I'm
understand.
not one of them. I understand that North America is the like this whole half the planet is American because half the planet is North, South, or Central American. So yeah, half the planet is American. It's just due to the reputation that America has, being the United States of America, people don't really classify America as the United States, especially up here in Canada. Like we don't like, yeah, you're the United States, but most people just either call you America or United States.
Yeah, and I want to kind of get off of me personally saying, America is just the United States, because it's well, like I've been thinking about the whole group thing, and not essentially group identity, but the grouping of individuals, and how they should act within, towards one another. I've come to the conclusion that, my reach is as far as my understanding, and my understanding is where I live, and I've visited other countries, but I've only lived in North America. um I've visited Canada. I've My family is from a city that is really close to Canada. Most of my family is from Detroit. So I've been in Detroit a lot. I've seen Toronto. I've been across the bridge. Well, been through the tunnel.
You've seen Toronto? I apologize.
Yeah. Well, it's a little bit shinier than Detroit is at times. But there's all that. I don't know where I was going with that.
Actually, the funny thing about Toronto is that the rest of Toronto, the rest of the GTA, doesn't like to be compared to Toronto because there's Torontarians and then there's the rest of us. People from Scarborough, they're from Scarborough. People from Brampton, they're from Brampton. People from Oakville, they don't like to be associated with the other two. The
Well,
only exception to this would be people from, like, for example, Etobicoke and Mississauga, and I haven't really talked to too many people from Milton, so I don't know how they feel.
But all those are different examples of collectives. And then within
Yep.
those collectives, you'll have different groups, different tribes. And I think that's where a lot of people get, confused with when you say collective rights, for example. You're thinking of small little groups. Those are group rights. And,
Well, in a perfect world, the definition of collective rights would be scalable. So it wouldn't matter
okay.
the size, theoretically. But the problem is that was the thing. I was trying to figure out what would be considered a collective right and what would be considered an individual right. And when I initially started this sort of thought train, I hit a brick wall.
Okay, well, so our brick wall was that one law that is like sometimes the collective rights can supersede it, or what is the brick wall that you had? Because if you break down, collectives into smaller groups, like to scale it, you'd have to be able to make sure that the right itself can be scaled from the collective, from the nation, to the smaller collective, which would be the province, in Canada's case, state in America's case.
Canada.
And then, I'm sorry.
I have a friend who actually calls it Canada.
Yeah, it gets confusing when you say Canadian, and then you just start saying Canada, and it's just like, what? No, why? But then how else would you say the plural of
America versus American.
yeah, yeah, I mean, how would you say the plural for, Canada? And it's not that it gets confusing, it's just your brain sometimes, your brain and yeah. I'm sorry. But
No worries.
um but you go from it at what point of the scale do you come to that brick wall when you're coming to rights? Are you coming to the bigger portion is where the wall is, or the smaller portion of the collective that is the societies that we live in?
Well, I actually wrote up a definition once for what I classified as a right, and basically between individual and collective, the definition would simply be what can only apply to an individual and cannot apply to a collective is an individual. What can only apply to a collective and cannot apply to an individual would be a collective right. And the beyond that, there are obviously ones that apply to both. Um, but like for example, you cannot say. Actually, that's a very good question. Would you say the right to exist would be an individual, collective, or both? Does like I mean, obviously the individual has a right to exist, but does a collective have a right to exist?
Well, I would say yes. Um, just by the virtue of the fact that we're social animals, and without a group, some form of group, that actually impacts our mental health. So we kind of need to have groups, and we need to have, a collective. But whether that collective is authoritarian in nature or not is more, you know should collectives exist? Yes. Should collectives exist and have right rules and responsibilities to how they act? I think yes. Because there are certain actions that I think we can easily see is harmful, like how polarization happens. Polarization does not happen through individuals. Polarization happens, you know, it filters from group to individual, but sometimes vice versa. Sometimes the individuals can impact the group. It's a weird dynamic as far as psychologically, going from the social level and ignoring all legal aspects. Like if it, because most people ignore the laws anyway.
I'm actually one of those people who have like a weird quirk that, like, I can't even, like, what's it called? What do you call it when you go across the road illegally? Jaywalking. I can't even do that. I actually have like a compulsion to follow laws. It actually bothers me when I don't. By the way, I actually did find my list. I have
Okay.
here the rights of the individual. As far as I got was life, liberty, pursuit of happiness, freedom of movement within their nation, and freedom to leave their nation, versus the right of the collective being assembly and lobby. This is where I kind of stopped and then thought, hey, I should probably try this on another day.
Well, I think we went through a few more of those individual rights.
Yeah. Well, yeah, because my thought behind was like, for example, pursuit of happiness. A group does not have an emotion. Like, the emotions are the individual people. The collective itself is not a conscious being. And if the group itself is not a conscious being, anything that requires a consciousness cannot apply to it.
Yeah, but now we're going to more philosophy.
Yeah, that was kind
which
of
which is good. I mean, I like philosophy, but a more philosophical, metaphysical way of looking at things. Because a collective may not have consciousness, but in a lot of ways, ideas do seem to be living things. Like it's individuals that drive them, but sometimes the ideas drive, seem to drive the people. You know what I mean? I mean, I'm sure both of us can come up with examples of that.
I'm trying to think. Yeah, because it's like, I mean, you can say the mob turned nasty, but that's not an emotion, that's an action. And an idea that would be controlling a group. Well, again, is that the idea controlling a group, or is that idea controlling a group of individual people? Because it's still an individual acting on that. It's just a group of them doing that. Did you mute yourself again?
Yeah, I'm sorry. Oh, what did you say again?
I was saying that, like, for example, a group can turn nasty, but that's still an idea. The idea is still being applied to the individual and not the group itself. And it's like the group can do an action, but it cannot have a thought. Like, as a group, the group can do blank, but the group cannot collectively think of this. Like, it cannot. It can come up with an idea, but it cannot. Like, I don't know. It's kind of weird to think about it that way.
Well, yeah, no, I got it. It's an individual does not have, or it's the individuals that have the actual thoughts. The collective itself, is after those thoughts are filtered through the individual, their ideas are spouted out because this is basically how ideologies form. It's not one person writing down a set of ideas, which it does sometimes happen. Like with Jordan Peterson's instance, it's kind of spontaneously happening, but he's also consciously controlling how the ideology is created. Like his book 12 Rules for Life. I haven't even gotten.
Yeah, that was an interesting one. I'm gonna have to eventually pick that up.
I have it on Audible. So
yeah, that's what I'll do eventually too. I had to recently download something for class, but by the way, I also found my definition of rights. I don't know if I've ever actually. I think I've probably sent it to you at least once, but it's
well let's talk about our definition of rights, because in that same Sargon stream that we're thinking of, that you mentioned before, They were talking about how a lot of them didn't actually think rights existed.
Yeah,
Oh
that's
no no no
something.
not that rights existed, but inalienable human right rights that apply to the whole species regardless of nationality. And I do think those exist, and I think that that's more of a way to keep nations, the actual governments, to not treat or mistreat or harm their own citizens, like what North Korea is doing right now should
Hmm.
be considered criminal.
Should it is
I mean,
internationally at least.
yeah, I mean it's like if he decides to invade South Korea like his grandfather did, then
Oh, if he does, I could just imagine if he were to just launch one nuke into the densest part of China. Imagine the fucking mayhem that would ensue.
well with I'm wondering how much damage um did he do to the earth itself by doing
The
um
tests?
the tests on a
Hmm.
fault line next to a super volcano. um
I remember
it
hearing about
it's
that, and they're saying that the concern was that if the mountain were to collapse, it would kick up a shit ton of radioactive dust. And I actually did the calculations on the fallout on that. Like, I didn't calculate how far it would go, of course, because that's a lot of numbers I couldn't bother to think about. But I did take into account the half life of the. I actually did some research on what type of bomb it was, what type of radiation it produces, how much radiation it produces, and the fallout and half like basically the half life. Like, if I remember correctly, I think it was 5 months from that point, where if it were released, it would take about 5 months for it to become more or less safe, or at least the dust portion of it, for the most lethal of the radiation. However, if it came into contact with a human within that 5 months, it becomes lethal for, I think it was 3 years, and it caused specifically, I think it was bone cancer. So basically, you'd see an increase in bone cancer within obviously North America, but it wouldn't get to Europe. Europe would be pretty safe by that point. Um,
Yeah, but China was saying, "Hey, you guys stop that because it's doing stuff." But it just I'm just wondering though. Um,
plate tectonic shit and stuff.
well, if you look at it, it the past 10 years, the all the we've been having an increase of volcanic activity. Um,
The Ring of
that
Fire.
it has gotten worse since since it's been public knowledge that they're doing nuclear tests, underground. Causation does not, well, whatever that is,
Correlation does not
does not
mean
equal.
causation, or
Yeah,
causation does not mean correlation, or whatever like that.
yeah, it's not equal to causation, but still, you have chaos theory, which, as far as I know, is still a mathematical theory that, you know if any type of thing that changes the earth in one spot will change the earth, will cause a ripple effect, essentially. So I'm wondering what kind of ripple effect that's doing. And
It
if
depends on the blast, because keep in mind, like if you were to blow up something in the water, you will have the ripple effect ripple across the entire ocean, or not entire ocean, but like say for example, something were to be detonated in the Pacific Ocean. Yes, California would get affected by it, Alaska would be affected by it, Japan would be affected by it, Russia, maybe even Australia, depending on the size of the blast. The issue, though, is when we're talking about, you know, plate tectonics, that is a lot thicker fluid, and energy will be displaced a lot more in the magma than it would be through water. Water, that shockwave travels pretty far and pretty fast, whereas in magma, yeah, it travels, but that's where seismographs shit plays into effect.
Yeah, yeah.
You're basically feeling the shockwave of stuff. Usually, though, there's a lot more energy, and even like an earthquake. There's a lot more energy in an earthquake than there is in, say, a nuclear bomb. Usually, I think the average is like 3 nuclear bombs is equivalent to like a minor earth or like just a decent sized earthquake.
Yes, yes, but I'm more thinking of, because I've been looking at Yellowstone, and Yellowstone is kind of
Super
interesting.
volcano.
Yeah, it's kind of interesting to look at because it's
Past due.
hugely active right now, to the point that it's not really a reason. It's not unreasonable to think it will blow. I don't think it will be as catastrophic as some people are claiming it to be, because sensationalism, sells papers. Sensationalism, so I mean, I'm not sure, but the actual, I think the possibility of a massive, one eruption thing is lower than, certain areas starting to erupt first, and then a chain reaction happening.
Assuming there's enough pressure in there, yeah, you can get a zipper effect.
Yeah, I think the zipper effect is more likely than the other thing, but that was giving me that was more going into, if it could be shown that Kim Jong Un's nuclear testing on a fault line has damaged the Earth in some way, has helped, not caused it, but
Increase
has
the risk of
increased the risk of all these things happening, because we're not really sure. We know we don't know everything that's going on down there, and stuff like that. We
no.
don't.
And if I remember correctly, if I was looking at the this is like a long time ago, back when I was interested in nuclear bombs. I had a really interesting childhood. But if I remember correctly, depending on the way the blast were to occur, or the type of explosion from the super volcano sort of thing, the caldera, Canada would be pretty good. Mostly, the United States would be fucked, and not just because of the explosion itself. Like, for example, the Washington D.C. They're going to get a little bit, but it's not exactly going to be as bad as people think. The place that's going to be fucked the most is where you get your food from. That will be basically completely destroyed, and not in terms of like explosion wise. I mean, like the ash that falls. You're gonna have some land that's poisoned. You're gonna have it impossible for the plants to, metabolize, basically take the oxygen in, because they're going to be coated. Their leaves are going to be coated in ash.
Well, that's well, as far as food production goes, that's an easy thing to do. You just till the land, because that ash may be poisonous a little bit to humans, but
it's beneficial.
You mix it in with good soil, which we can get good soil like by the palletfuls. Or I don't think, unless the ash actually covers the sun for an extended period, for years and years, right?
No, I won't do that. I think it actually will decrease light generation, or light like from the sun, but not a whole lot, and not for very long, if I remember correctly. It is still a danger because it will fuck up your economy.
Yeah. I mean, but
Canada.
I mean, we will. Well, it gives Canada,
A hell of a boost.
Canada food growers your farming industry will boom for at
Mm-hmm.
least a year, and you guys can look all nice and good by being like, we're feeding America. Yeah. Or
Yep.
we're not America, but we're feeding the United States.
Yeah, because also California would be fucked over too.
Yeah,
And
but
that's a
you know
big deal.
they're already fucked over. Half their state is a desert. Uh, so I mean,
Yep.
yeah, who knows? That might make what used to be a desert not a desert anymore.
That's possible
Um,
too. Underground aquifers and stuff like that.
well, it's not just that, but think of the shockwave that would cause. That could it could potentially you
Oh, the soy boys.
rattle some chain reactions in the mountain chains that Yellowstone is near or part of. I think it's part of the Rocky Mountain chain, which is part of what makes the Mojave Desert, the Mojave Desert.
Yeah, I'd have to actually look at a map for that because I've never actually. I'm always confused about where Yellowstone is.
Yeah, it's between I think it's around Wyoming, Colorado, um that the Four Corners, I think, is where Yellowstone is. I think I'm not entirely sure, but we're yeah, as far as I know, the closest mountain range to California is the Rocky Mountains. Um, and that mountain range goes from top to bottom.
Yeah.
It extends into Canada and becomes a different mountain range, I guess, in
No,
Canada.
it's still called the Rocky Mountains.
Oh, okay,
In
okay.
fact, there's a lot of issues between BC and Alberta right now over that whole oil thing. So that'll be interesting. That's one of the things I think are kind of funny about California and they're wanting to become their own state.
Well, that's the weird thing I see about the oil is that the petrochemicals, um, they that stuff is going to die off. We're going to start fighting over rare earth metals
Mm-hmm.
fairly
Which is one of
soon
the
because
reasons that I heard that they're going with what's it called? That's the thing about North Korea is apparently there's a lot of rare earth metals there, and that's kind of why this whole thing's going on. Is Kim Jong Un's basically saying, "Back the fuck off."
well, I mean, that doesn't make any sense though, because he could just get his little scrawny. Oh no, he can't. He can't get those people to mine. So but if he had a healthy
People.
people, he could mine that stuff and sell that shit for
Mm-hmm.
top dollar because everybody wants to go green. But the unfortunate thing is to go green, you have to have rare earth metals, which are not replaceable. It's the contradiction of green energy, in my opinion. Which I think global warming is also connected more to volcanic activity than to
I mean
our.
that fake democratic conspiracy theory shit.
Well, no. I think climate change, our climate is actually changing, but I
Oh, of
think
course it
that
is.
there's more than just human pollution that is affecting it. We're not helping any.
We're
We're
speeding up the process.
yeah, but I think that it happens from below the crust up type of thing, like
Well, there
because
is a mix of things because when I did some research onto this, I found that there's historically the planet has had like a lot of CO2 in the past, and temperatures have been as high as I think it was 9 degrees above normal. Right now we're at like what 1.2 or something like that. And historically, and I'm not even going that far back. Like we're talking. Mm, actually, when would that be? We're still talking within the lifetime of living creatures. Probably around the prehistoric. I don't know what was those. I think it was a couple million years ago. There was
The Triassic period had a extreme period of warming, according to fossil records.
Yeah, I can believe that. And there's been cooling temperatures. Actually, the temperature hasn't gone really that far down in comparison to how far it's been up. And when you look at CO2, that's fluctuated a lot in the last couple million years. Um, and I'm generally gonna trust the ice core samples over current projections. Because hindsight's 2020, basically. Predictions can be wrong. I mean, we have trouble predicting the weather, and that's just within 1 week.
Yeah, yeah, but I think that things like the ocean temperature rising and stuff like that is more because of volcanoes. And I think we're going to see a new island, like a new big island pretty
Really?
soon. I think so, but that's only because I'm a geology nerd. I've been looking at volcanic activity in the oceans, and it's
Atlantic or Pacific?
um both.
Are you saying Atlantis will rise?
It might. It's a possibility, but I mean, I'm not predicting anything. It's just we might see at some point in the next 100 years, 150 years, a new island
That'd be
somewhere.
kind of interesting.
You know, like it's because it's weird. It's but we got onto this tangent because I was talking about I was talking about like the UN. The UN
Yeah,
is
the
a
UN.
collective. Does the UN have
Is
the
there really
right?
any point in having a title for this? Just like random shit.
No, there's no point to having title for it, but why not?
Yeah,
Um,
I get it. But yeah,
I mean,
it's. I mean, you almost brought me to the start of talking about La Brazil,
oh,
talking about Ireland. La Brazil, La Brazil, not Brazil, La Brazil. This is
yeah.
older than Brazil. This is the Atlantis of Ireland. Strangely enough, there is actually a rock where this island should be.
Huh,
Yeah,
yeah,
suspicious.
yeah. I
Supposedly, it's
mean,
an island
well,
hidden in the mist.
I'm supposed to actually go through. Um, well, right now, I last night I was going through uh different videos by somebody who is on a YouTube channel that I'm not going to name because why not? But the person that actually brought us together because I was shit posting on her post and then suddenly I got a follow from you.
Hmm.
Um, it was Bunny Blackwell. Her
Ah,
Well, I'm supposed to go through the
I used to follow her.
people the people that she used to do YouTube streams with until she had to cut all social media because of what she was going through in university. Um,
What was she? I actually didn't
criminal,
know.
criminal. It was like criminal forensics. I think it
Oh,
was.
she was trying to
Yeah,
be a forensics. Yeah, I remember
yeah,
that, but I don't
in
know about if she
Canada.
left. Yeah, because she said she wanted to be a politician.
Oh yeah, she said something about it on Minds, but she essentially shut down her YouTube channel and shut down her Twitter.
Yeah, I noticed that. Then she was on Twitter, and then she went to Minds, and I don't use Minds enough, so I just thought, fuck it.
Well, on Minds, she said that her classes, her classes were taking more, this stuff was taking time out of her class time. So
Makes sense.
yeah, that does make sense. But I'm supposed to look through uh their videos for times of when they say not bad things, but when they're just like dismissive of religious people.
Mm.
Yeah. So
I've actually deleted a lot of my stuff from before just due to the fact that I didn't Well, because at one point I was actually trying to go for CSIS.
Oh, see, I haven't deleted anything on my Twitter. I don't really care.
I have like,
I mean,
well, okay, fair enough. I actually had my real name out there at one point, so I actually deleted a lot of it. Luckily, my name not too uncommon, thankfully.
yeah.
So not too uncommon. There's other people with my name out there that are more popular, more famous than I. So that way, I was able to silently delete a lot. Make
Yeah,
sure. I even went through Google and basically requested them to remove some stuff from the search engine.
yeah, yeah. I mean, yeah. I mean, I'm sure that t- it depends on how long ago it was, but Twitter can actually see, even the deleted stuff, they can dredge it
Yeah.
out if they so want to. But
Well,
that would mean that you piss somebody off at Twitter enough that so you'd have to actually be big enough for them to actually notice you because there's some people that retweeted me that were quote unquote one of the 13 Russian intelligence
really,
people. Yeah, there's
I
a
should be
couple of
looking
them
into
that retweeted my memes about Donald Trump during the election because I'm at the I'm seriously of the mind that it wasn't really it was more of the people that were talking about ethics and journalism and stuff like that um that were those kind of people that were making those memes um because I don't want to get you in trouble with the Canadian government because
Yeah, we do have some issues with that now, don't we?
yeah.
They're starting to crack down on things. At the moment, I'm good, uh, but I have to be careful because of the Ontario Human Rights Commission. That shit
Yeah,
is fucking terrifying.
yeah, Jordan Peterson was right.
Yeah. Oh my God,
100%.
I've gone through their some of their stuff, and it's just like take for example,
Well,
small claims
this
court.
is actually an example of when individual in when collective rights do not actually supersede
Supersede
individual.
individuals.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yes.
yeah,
This
it's
is
very true.
when we get to the freedom of speech, which is in my opinion an unalienable human right. You should be able to criticize anything you wish from government, religion, ideologies, philosophies, people.
Hmm.
You should be able to criticize all those things and not have any legal ramifications upon you. That's to me what I mean. What is meant by free speech? It's nothing that you say can be illegal, and you cannot be put in jail for saying it, as long as you're not saying, as long
Gas
as
the
you're not,
Jews.
yeah. Well, as long as you're not seriously saying gas the Jews. I mean, just saying gas the Jews as a joke, I don't think is wrong. But when you're seriously going, okay, let's
Gas them up.
yeah,
Light
let,
up the
let
fires.
let's seriously the serious solution is killing X group of people. That's every individual in X group is also another example of when an individual's right of free speech does not actually, it's not hate speech. I don't see it as hate speech, but it's speech that you're telling people, you're actually telling people to harm others. You're telling individuals to harm others. You're encouraging it. You're saying, and I think that's wrong. On a moral level. And if we could argue about whether or not my perception of morality um should be valid, as valid as everybody else's perception of morality. And should be able to have this kind of conversation within civilized society. Should.
Yeah,
But
it's definitely getting terrifying out there. There was something. Oh, no, actually, okay. Sorry, I just want to mention this because this was kind of fascinating. It's very much a tangent. Kind of brings it back to what we had talked about before. Remember that bill I mentioned, the Bill C-51, the
yes,
witchcraft thing.
yes.
Included in that is this, and this is
I
kind of
would
goes back
say
to the
this.
male.
Oh, shit.
It goes to yeah, it's about the male feminist stuff, or sorry, not male feminist, the men's right thing, which I thought was kind of fascinating. I just want to mention it just because it is kind of interesting. This bill will also create a process to determine whether a sexual assault complainant, a sexual assault's complainant, I can't speak today, whether a sexual assault complainant's personal records, so say for example the woman who claims she was sexually assaulted, whether her records, e.g. diary, medical, and psychiatric records, including things such as social media, can be admitted into evidence at trial by the accused, and it would require government to table statements with the new bill. Yeah. Basically, essentially, it's saying creating a process for which, the accused can provide evidence by, say, for example, the you know the accuser's Facebook messaging. It's interesting that they have to actually bring that into a bill.
Oh wow, no. Yeah, that's not good. I
I
mean,
mean,
that's
it's a good idea to have it, but it's weird that they actually have to do that in a bill.
no. I mean, there's some things that are like it it's good that kind of it. Am I understand? Am I understanding it correctly that if it can be shown through Facebook that you know your that
Accuser lied.
your accuser lied,
Yeah,
it's
it would be evidence against them.
okay, so that is a good thing
Mm-hmm.
because that takes public domain information and
Well, no, it
yeah.
wouldn't be public domain. It'd be private. That's the thing. Normally, private information that is being used in court to basically prove innocence.
Oh, to prove innocence, yes.
Yeah. Well, I would assume so. The
As
guy's the accuser.
as long as the defendant or the plaint as long as the defendant is giving that information of his own volition, I don't
Well,
really
that's the
see the
thing.
problem.
The accuser wouldn't. It would be the accused giving it.
Yeah.
It
So
could be considered an invasion of privacy,
the
but
defendant, yeah,
he's using it.
it could be seen as as invasion of privacy, but then you're again you're communicating with somebody on a public network by a public entity that is under certain communication codes guidelines because what you're doing is communication. It's not broadcast, but it is a communication. So there are laws that allow that to happen, but at the same time, it's like, well, if you can prove through a Facebook message that that person is lying,
Yep.
then it should be allowed.
Oh
And
yeah.
it's not really an invasion of privacy at that point if the defendant is like, hey, this is what happened. Look at this and shows.
Mm-hmm.
That's just evidence. Because you could use you can use in a court of law a letter that was written, a physical letter that was written as evidence against the accuser. You can do that. So I mean, I don't really see the difference between the two because
Yeah, I don't either. I think it's all good.
it's not like the courts are actually public. Like,
No, they are.
are they?
Any court record is publicly available. All you have to do is basically just pay for the copying fee. There are exceptions, of course, but these are very few. Like, say, for example, I learned this recently. Even things such as a request or a warrant is public record. So you can check to see if someone was basically had their house raided.
Oh yeah, well, that's good.
Hmm. I agree. It's just interesting that's. I didn't think that was actually available initially.
Yeah, well, I mean, that's good in the way that, people can't lie then.
Hmm. But yeah, then it also means that there's a possibility that someone can use. Well, they can't. They're not supposed to be able to use that against them in the hiring process and all that thing. Like, yeah, our system of or our actually that's a very good question. Okay, your constitution, does that apply to only the government, or does that apply to interactions between the people?
Um, sorry. That's it both. It it applies to the government, but it also applies to um people, the people as well. The government can't tell the individual what to say, for example, is from freedom of speech. But at the same time, the government cannot punish a person for saying, you know, what that person wants to say. That's just free speech. You can get a social type of punishment, but there's no such thing as a cause without an effect, or when you say something that's a cause, the effect will be whatever you get back. So there will never be a causeless effect, but there should not be a legal effect. It should not affect you legally. It shouldn't really affect you by the job. There's no real way to control that at all. I don't think. I mean, not without breaking the Constitution. It's a weird thing. The Constitution. It's like it envelops both individual and group rights, and it
Hmm.
gives it gives a group an individual the same rights in some instances. That's why corporations being having personhood is so controversial, because it gives corporations the rights of a person does under the Constitution. That gives the corporation free speech. Like, for example, Facebook could tell, you know, Germany to go fuck off, or all these other countries trying to say, well, tell Twitter and Facebook and Google, you can't allow these things, because we don't want them in our country. Well, okay, you don't want them in your country. We'll make sure that they don't get shown in our country. We're not going to make them illegal.
See, I'm agreeing with. I like that philosophy, but the problem is, in Canada, we don't have that. Interactions between government and people is strictly the Ontario Human Rights. Sorry, I said that wrong. The Canadian Freedoms. What was it called? Charter of Rights and Freedoms. Sorry, that's what I meant to say. Charter of Rights and Freedoms, equivalent to our Constitution, um, only applies to interactions between the individuals and the government. Now, each
Okay.
province has their own version of the Human Rights Code. This is what applies to interactions between, well, pretty much everyone, actually. It's individuals and government.
It works the same way here, except for the states, and then like the county rules, the county,
Hmm.
city, and state rules more apply to the individuals. You know,
Yeah, like, for example,
communicating with the federal law level, it's the individuals and the groups with federal government, state government, and then county government, and then the county government, the county and city is basically the people that tells us how we're supposed to act through law enforcement and stuff like that.
Yeah, because I do find it interesting. I kind of wish there was I wish the Constitution, the Charter of Rights and Freedom did apply to interaction between individuals. It, like for example, right now, technically a website can abuse human rights code violations. Technically, because they aren't really governed by, actually, there's a better way of describing it. The Ontario Human Rights Code, there are only certain sections that apply to individuals, so, interactions between civil stuff. Most of it is about company stuff. So, like, for example, if you're an employee of the company cannot do X, Y, and Z. Whereas if you are an individual using their services, they can do X, Y, and Z. The government can't do X, Y, and Z, but they also can't do X, Y, and Z from the Charter of Rights. The Charter is basically, I don't know exactly how it works for the United States, but in Canada, if a bill is passed, it can be challenged under the Charter of Rights and Freedoms, as a charter violation. This usually, it could be at any court level, but if it goes to the Supreme Court basically looks at it and looks at the charter and basically says, does this violate the charter? If no, charter gets, it's fine. There's been many times like that where the charter gets, I'm kind of rambling because I'm kind of drawing at the moment too. You still there or are you muted? I guess it's probably muted. Or the headphones died or something. Well, in that case, why don't I just screen share my thing? Just increase that. Sure, there we go. Yeah, I kind of wish there was like a super chat sort of thing here, because then I could, or not super chat, but just a chat in general, because then I could kind of look at it and see what people think about this drawing. Maybe even get some advice on what they would recommend. Who knows, maybe I could try to, ooh, that looked horrible. No. Yeah, are you still there, or are you, go away. Actually, that's a very good question. I wonder what you can see with this. Oh, you're having technical difficulties. Oh, okay. Well, in that case, maybe we should just leave it at that. Been going for probably a while now. About 2 hours. Well, I could end with my reading of what I consider to be a right. See if that works. So, in my opinion, rights are a set of restrictions you agree not to impose on others within the society you wish to remain in or enter. This includes the entering or remaining within the physical domain under the control of this contract, because I define it as a contract, basically. In exchange for the same treatment from others under the same contract. Additionally, this contract requires the agreed to not violate or take any of the natural. Are you back?
Yeah, I'm back.
Okay, I was just starting to read out the definition of a right here.
Okay, keep going.
Okay. All right, where was I here? Additionally, this contract requires the agreed to not violate or take any of the natural gifts given to any individual person upon their birth. Examples being life, senses, method of expressions involving only your physical body, physical and mental freedoms. So, like, no brainwashing, basically. Lastly, there are conditions where these rights may be violated or bent temporarily, bent/temporarily violated. These conditions are as follows. In the case of a violation, only the organization that enforces this contract, and by extension those acting on its behalf, for example, law enforcement, by its permission, can violate the rights of those within this contract. So long as it is in the defense of the rights of others within this contract. So locking someone up, basically. The bending or temporary violation of rights is only with regard to the physical freedoms and freedom of expression of the agreed, and this can only happen on advertised land owned by. Owned by the enforcer of this contract, whether it is on lease to an individual or by the enforcer itself. So, for example, property that's been, like a warehouse, for example, private property, because technically that's on lease from the contract owner. Prior to the temporary violation or bending of the agreed rights, a warning must be issued, and an adequate amount of time must be given for the agreed to vacate the designated area or contest the violation/bending. How's that sound? What do you think of that?
That's great. I mean, as far as the everything you're rating, I there's some things that is weird.
It was something I designed after learning about contract law.
Okay. Well, I mean, there's because it's like, what is the test to make sure that it's actually brainwashing? Because you're going to have the inevitable people saying, teaching feminism in school is brainwashing, or teaching religion in school is brainwashing, or teaching religion to children is brainwashing, or teaching feminism to children is brainwashing, or teaching atheism to children is brainwashing.
Okay.
On and on and on and on and on and on.
There's an easy one for that one. Okay, in that case, that's not brainwashing, that's propaganda. Whether they choose to believe it or not is up to them. When I'm talking about mental freedoms, I'm talking about literally someone reprogramming your brain, like hardwiring it, plugging something in and rewriting it.
Okay. I just wanted clarification on that, because it's like, here are all the ways that I can twist that to my own ends.
Yeah, I mean literal interpretations on those. Like, same thing with the physical, literally someone pushing you into a place, or literally putting a physical barrier in your way. Mental barriers, being pressured, saying go this way, and I'll give you a cookie. Well, that's you still doing something. I mean, you can still physically continue on that path. If you can physically continue on that path, even if it's, you violate the law and they lock you up for it, whatever. But the fact is, you can choose to continue walking forward. If you can choose to continue walking forward and you can keep doing so, whether it's, no matter what the outcome is, as long as you don't hit a brick wall, that is not restricting your movement. Now, the whole private property thing, that would be like, for example, having a house. Well, you're restricted from walking into my garage because the garage is shut. That's fine because I have this building on lease from the building I'm in is on a property that's on lease by the government. And the door basically blocking your way is essentially the warning saying you're not allowed entering. So if you break through that, that's essentially you ignoring the warning.
Okay. All right. So I have to cut this.
Stream?
Yeah, because
Yeah, no worries.
I do have to get ready for tonight's stream.
Oh,
Yeah. Not on this channel. On the Red Pill Religion channel.
yeah. What is that again?
All right. Essentially, we stopped shit posting against atheists as hard as we used to, because it's guy named Max, right? He goes by Max, his confirmed name, and that's how he goes through. He's known by a different name, but I would rather just not use any
No
real
worries.
names. But he was a big men's rights guy, and he
Honey Badger?
well, yeah.
Oh, really? That guy?
Yeah,
Max, whatever his name is? Yeah.
yeah, Max Colvey.
I
Yeah,
like it.
I do live streams with him every now and then, and whenever we do live streams, either pointing something out or stuff like that, I like to cut the content down, like that we're actually to the points that we're actually looking at, and instead of just running through the whole entire thing, because
Kind of like what we're doing now.
well, not just that. It's just instead of doing a full response video, right? You only want to respond to certain clips and snippets, and a way to get around having to only play 20 seconds of a video at a time is you put it in Movie Maker or something else like that, and you cut out the parts that you want, because then it becomes fair use at that point, because you were then editing something that was whole, and editing it to for criticism, or
Yeah.
criticism or commentary, so that falls under fair use. Like if somebody was to take this stream and start cutting parts out of it and start responding to it, I can't really do
Criticize it.
a no, I can't really do a copyright strike, because it's under fair use, because
And
they're
I wouldn't expect it anyways. It's not a big deal.
well, yeah, but they're as long as it's modified, right? As long as you're modifying
Well, if
things.
I can understand if it's something that you actually creative. Like, for example, if someone, actually, that's a very good question. What do you see when I do that? Like, do you see me moving to Google Hangouts right now?
No,
Do you
no,
only see what I was drawing?
I only see what you're drawing.
Oh, awesome. I like this. That's good to know. Yeah, so like if, for example, someone took me this stream of me doing this and they uploaded it and claimed copyright, I wouldn't care. I
Yeah,
really wouldn't. The only thing I
well,
would care is if someone actually took the took the actual finished work and claimed it was their own. Even then, I
yeah.
probably wouldn't care too much because I don't get paid for this. This is just me doing it for fun.
Yeah, but I mean, I'm going to use it for my avatar on things that I get, that I'm trying to get donations for. So, yeah.
That's
Well,
fine.
just as a general avatar, because why not? Because I use the avatar I have now is fair use, because I modified it, but it's just I can't draw.
Oh, fucking American language.
Yeah, I'm sorry.
Yeah, you
But
recognize that. So yeah, yeah, the fair use stuff is It's something I've never actually had to deal with, luckily. But anyways,
I should stop broadcasting.